I'll begin the presentation by a quick run-through on data. After that, we'll be going over to questions of the panel. I remind everybody that after we ask the questions, I ask the questions of the panel, it's open questions from the audience. So you might want to begin now setting questions on your app so that when we get to that point, we have a list of questions available to ask the panel. As I said, I'm with the Karnoubi U.S. flag being canceled. The first slide just shows the idea that there's a lot of countries producing fava beans. We begin with the fava bean presentation. As you see, China is very dominant, but China is also a huge consumer, so they don't participate that much in the export market. I want to keep in mind that among all these smaller countries, there is trading. They can be a net importer, but they're still going to trade back and forth with the fava beans. We're a trading country, or I should say world, and so therefore there's always going to be movements in and out of the country, even if you're a net importer. These are the largest producers. As you can see, by far China's the largest. Again, they're someone who consumes most of their fava beans, so they're not really participating that much in the export market. Then you have Ethiopia. They're a very large consumer and producer. Australia is geared more towards the export market. They're actually doing more exporting than actually domestic consumption. We have the same thing with the UK. They're a very large exporter. And then we get to France. They have been a large exporter up till recently, and they're the only ones supplying into Egypt. They've now started using most of their production internally for animal feed. They do go a little lesser of a grade, not quite a very popular food grade, and so they started using it for feed for their animals. Then you have Germany, Egypt. Egypt is another large producer, but also a consumer, and will export and import. Followed by Canada. I brought Canada up because they're sort of entering more into the market and they have potential for really expanding out production. But of the production you see that they're putting out, they're probably only exporting maybe 15 to 20,000 metric tons a year at this point. And of course we have the Sudan, which again is another large producing country, but also a large consumption country. Now we're going to list the countries that export and the largest ones by volume. And you see that Australia is very driven for export. And of Australia's production, probably 70% of that is directed towards Egypt. Egypt is a big market. You'll see that in another slide. Then we have the UK. Then we have Lithuania sort of building up. We have the Baltic states that have kind of stepped out. You got Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Estonia being the smallest player. But these are countries that in the future will do more and more of looking at trying to export fava beans to other countries. Okay, here's the metric ton productions. Now, I want to show that between 2017 and 2018, you had a drop in production, and that was because of the weather factor around the world. And at that point, it really drove the prices up. My understanding is that Australian favas, which are preferred fava bean, reach as high as 900 metric ton. This year, you're going to have a rebound in production, and with that, you're going to have a precipitous fall in the value of fava beans around the world. Here's a quick summary. 2018 fava crop had issues in many producing regions, including major exporting countries such as Australia, UK, Baltics, and France. This drove market prices to very high levels. This will increase production this year, but it's going to turn into much lower values. Largest exporters are Australia, United Kingdom, and that's followed by smaller volumes from Lithuania, Egypt, Latvia, Ethiopia, Germany, and Canada. And I'll repeat this again, that France used to be heavily involved with the export market, but recently started consuming production domestically for animal feed. Newer entrants into the export markets, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, have been taking over some of the export business that France had left. But with poor yields in 2018, actually for the 2019 crop, their acres are down about 10%. While Egypt is a large producer and exporter, they still need to import majority of the consumption. Production has dropped rapidly since the 90s. Egypt, by far the largest and most important faba bean market in the world, and represents 45 to 50% of the world market demand. Now we're going to step into the white beans. We'll start with the smallest white bean, the pea beans. Those are primarily grown in the United States, Canada, and Ethiopia. We're seeing a slight increase this year in production and hectares on the navy beans. If you look here, the interesting part is that you have Canada dropping, actually increasing in production while the U.S. is dropping. We're looking at the U.S. crop being down approximately 20% between Michigan and North Dakota. In the meantime, we've seen the increase out of Canada, so it's turned into sort of a balancing act. So if you look down the numbers for 2017, 18, and 19, there's somewhat consistency. It's just going to have variations by the country on who's producing. Okay, just a little synopsis on that. Hectares will be down 15 to 20% overall in the United States. We'll have a very manageable carryover due to government food aid purchasing, and matter of fact, there's just another recent one that Marion will probably talk about here in a moment. And this will keep supplies fairly tight probably next year, particularly with this government tender that came out. Canada, the hectares have been increased as lucrative compared to other items that are available out there. They're also seeing an opportunity to feed into the European Union. While the U.S. does have that 25% tariff barrier, it's a barrier created by the U.S. setting up tariffs for steel and aluminum imports in the U.S. And for retaliation, the Europeans went after the agricultural products. Ethiopia, plant explorations based upon a survey done by the EPOS PEA, which is an association of pollsters in Ethiopia. They're expecting an increase this year and probably slightly a little better volume than they've had over the 5-year average. Great Northerns, we'll look at United States and Canada. Originally this year, people were thinking down acres on Canada and U.S. on the Great Northerns, but as it's turned out, as they're closer to planting and growers realized that the white beans were actually a fair return compared to the low prices we're having on corn, soys, and everything else, we'll probably have about the same size acres as last year, or maybe a touch up. But even then, this is not a huge crop. This number here would represent sort of an average crop for Great Northerns. So we're going to go with almost no carryover, and ultimately what we're going to have is a situation where we'll have a nice average crop, but the world could be short on white beans, medium-sized white beans, and we could see the government, if the EU continues the tariff, to be buying a lot of the U.S. product and basically supporting the market. And there are the production numbers for Great Northerns as we see them. Again, a slight increase over last year. Okay. As remarks about the Great Northern United States, small increase in hectares planted compared to 2018, displacing some pinto acres in Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming. And I have to correct that now, because now we're looking at probably about the same acres as we had last year. So last minute set. We just kind of gotten into the planting season. We're running a little late. And U.S. government food aid tenders have tightened supplies, and there will be very little carryover. Our guess is, at this point, with the tenders they've had, they've probably bought 25% of the U.S. crop and used for domestic and export food aid, with a big piece of that going to Yemen. Canada, growers are looking at white beans to be a little better than other options. There'll be a increase in hectares planted in 2019. but still staying within a manageable size. Dealers do not want to speculate on continued medium and large food aid demands, and that's the same way the U.S. is looking at it also. Now we get to alluvias. We'll discuss this Argentinian and Egyptian alluvias. You're looking at a slide up in Argentina on the hectares. This is not a small crop and not a large crop for Argentina. This is, we've seen some very large crops come out of there. It seems to be running in line with what the hectares have been over the last few years, more or less. Then into the production side, again, we'll see a slight uptick. Again, right now you do have Argentina and Egypt going into the actual harvesting of the product. So we'll find much better data here very soon as far as the actual production. Whereas with the great northerns in Canada and the U.S., they're just going in the ground now. We won't know anything really until September, October, as far as true production. Okay, we'll get into the Argentinian alluvias. Due to bad weather, 34% of the crop was planted or replanted very late after March 30th. And there's been some discussions that maybe it was only 25%, but we're just putting down to 30 to 40%. So yields should be lower in these areas. There was a white mold issue early on, but they seem to have gotten that under control. And production looks to be very good. Most current estimate we've gotten, and that was after we've actually submitted these data to the presentation, is they are talking about 139,000 metric tons, roughly a touch under a metric ton per hectare production. Looking at Egypt, the 2019 will increase by 26% from the 2018 crop, and will be back in line with the 2017 crop hectares planted. Harvest is actually beginning now, and there's concern that there might be potential yields and quality due to factors due to weather. And we'll get that as one of the questions going on later on for a little more detail, since now you have a little more information about the crop. Medium to large white beans are kind of stuck Kyrgyzstan and China under this. Kyrgyzstan plants about the same acres every year. It's 95% is done in one particular region of the area. I don't see variation on that, unless whoever has it. They'll still be producing a little over a metric ton per hectare. And China continues to drop. I think the number we have really here is really based more upon what the export data is for 10,000 metric tons. My understanding is actually more than that produced. But a lot of the white beans of what they're growing on is actually being used internally in China. And of course, we had a discussion before where we think down the road, ultimately, China will become an import country. These are just the tallies on the actual metric ton production. Medium large white beans, Kyrgyzstan. Production underestimated by some and believed to be valued more close to 60 to 70,000 metric tons. I heard a lot of people talking about 50,000 metric tons. Primary growing region is the Tadros, is 90 to 95% of production area. It is now at its maximum percent of production hectares. Lack of plant location and reusing production for seed, I think in the long run will have a big impact on production in that region. China production is expected to continue in the 10,000 range or less of exportable white bean production. As production continues to drop from its highs of 10 years ago, most white bean production is now being used domestically in China. And we do mention there are small amounts of sales into Germany and into the EU. And it's just a chart where I put all the numbers together and the bottom line, and you have to look at those numbers and realize that there's a lot of other white beans going around the world that are grown domestically. I gave an example of being the Harcourt Blancs in France. You just don't register those because they're produced there and they're consumed there. All right, I'm going to thank you very much, and now we're going to go to the panel questions. I'm going to go by country, and we'll start off with Argentina. and with Nicolas. And alluvial market, what are the principal destinations of alluvial exports for this last year? And is there any new buyers in the years to come?
Hello, good morning. The alluvial market in Argentina, our exports will have to be divided in 3 different regions. First of all, 1/3% of our production is exported to North of Africa, led by Algeria and some other countries in the north of Africa, but Algeria is the main one. In the second place, it is Mediterranean Europe, led by Spain, but also a lot of our alluvials goes to Italy, Portugal, Greece, France, and all along the Mediterranean coast. In a more smaller quantities, something to Eastern Europe. And in the third place, our third market with around 33% is Middle East, led by Turkey in the first place. And we are increasing little by little exports to other Middle East countries like Jordan, Israel, and directly to Iraq. About our newcomers or new destinations for our exports, I think that Brazil is buying little by little more every year. They started buying around 5-6 years ago, around 10,000 metric tons, and they are increasing little by little. And the market of Iraq is becoming very important for us. In the past, it used to be supplied by Turkey, but nowadays they are starting buying directly from Argentinian exporters.
Next thing I have for you is, how do you see the quality of the new crop? And what do you think the prices are going to be on the new crop alluvials?
Well, as you said, Judd, approximately 40% of the crop was planted late or very late. So yet in alluvials we don't have practically anything harvested to make some conclusions regarding the quality. I can say that the 50-60% of the part that was planted in the correct days will be harvested we start harvesting in the next week if the weather allows. We have forecast some rains for the next days, which we are looking closely. And well, the second part, which was planted late, we still have to wait for 20-30 days. And as you explained, we are facing lower temperatures from next week onwards. Regarding the quantity, I believe that Argentina will have a similar quantity to last year. Maybe some months ago I thought it was to be a little bit bigger, but the big part that was planted late probably won't give the yields we expected. And regarding the price, well, the quantity and the quality will give us the price for the new crop. I can tell that Argentina faced a very important loss of competition since August of last year. We have a very important export tax that we have to pay to the government supposedly until December 2020. So that give us that bring us to lose a lot of competitions toward other markets. So we need a good price for the farmers to keep on planting.
Okay, thank you. I'd now direct the question to Todd from Australia. In light of the high price experienced with fava beans this last year and the substitution this may have encouraged, what do you think could have been the long-term impact on future fava demand into Egypt?
Good morning, and thanks Joe for the question. I think the past season for fava beans, for anybody in the fava bean trade, has been unprecedented. In the situation where we saw low production not only in the southern hemisphere but also the northern hemisphere, which is not very usual that you see two dramatic weather events in the two hemispheres. So what we did see was this perfect storm of bad circumstances. We saw prices go from $350 in the very beginning of the season to roughly about $950 a couple of months ago. So prices have eased in that time as the supply channels in the importing countries have got filled, and have eased back another $150 to $200. But in the circumstance where you get a commodity increasing in price by 3 times, you're always going to have the possibility that the consumer is going to look for a substitute product that they can put into their meals. In circumstance in Egypt, I believe they were certainly looking at kaboulis, adding kaboulis into their splits and their grits for falafel consumption. Also, even yellow peas were touted as being introduced into the diet. So it's always dangerous when a new commodity comes into the menu of a consumer, because what it does, it allows the consumer to understand the various parameters of that commodity, and it certainly makes it easier for the consumer to switch over to these new substitutes, because now they have a new understanding, a new taste for that particular substitute, whether it be kabouli or yellow peas. So what it does, it makes the situation, I guess, more dangerous for fava bean consumption, but at the heart of everything is price. So if you've got $950 fava beans, yes, you're going to be looking at a $450 kabouli. But as prices, as Judd alluded to, the new season is looking like it's going to return back to normal production. You would expect prices to ease back, or fava bean prices to ease back to price levels more in line with a 5-year average. So once fava bean prices come back to 600, 500, 400, that desire to change to a substitute product is annulled. So it all depends on price, Judd.
Okay.
Say at $9.50, yes, fava bean consumption will drop. But if we ease back to prices more in line with 5-year average, I would expect fava bean consumption to go back to the 100% levels that we've seen in the past.
Well, good, because that was the next question I was going to ask you. That was the million-dollar question. What do you think the price is going to be?
2 weeks ago, before I come to the conference, I was fairly confident that the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere would have average production levels. In the last couple of days, I've been talking to Lithuania. They've got dry weather. Their planting program is down 20%. So instead of 70,000 hectares, they've planted 53,000 hectares. It's very dry. They're very concerned about their production. In Australia, the government department responsible for weather forecasts is predicting a near El Nino event for the Southern Hemisphere in our area. So therefore, that tends to lead towards less than average rainfall and higher than average temperatures. So, big question mark. I would have said, okay, we're going to go back to more in line with 5-year averages, say $350 to $500 a tonne for fava beans. But given the situation in Lithuania at the moment, given the uncertainty in Australia in regards to the weather, in Australia, our next crop is not until November. Lithuania will harvest at the end of September and October, so there's at least 3 months to go before any new crop fava beans comes to the market. So I'm going to revise my price estimate to 400, 550 in that range.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to direct my next questions to Marion Hunt, and we're going to lead off with what is the current planting situation in North America?
Well, in some regions we're just getting started. If we take a look at North America, on the western region of Manitoba, North Dakota, Minnesota, they've been pretty good. Manitoba, I'd say, is approaching 100% complete. North Dakota and Minnesota, as of the end of last week, were probably about 90% complete, and that's on average with the last 5 years. However, most of those acres have been planted very late. And then if we look at Nebraska, where about 60% of the Great Normans are planted. Last week they were 20 to 30% planted, but Judd, they're probably closer to 50 now.
Yeah.
I think there's been some good weather, so planting has advanced. Now, in the eastern regions, which I would term as Ontario and Michigan, we've certainly had some challenges. In Ontario, where I'm from, we're probably 10% planted, and we've been planting corn, soybeans, and dry beans all on the same day. So we've had a very late start because of wet weather, Michigan is just getting going too, and I know Joe Kramer mentioned a grower had just finished planting on Saturday and had his crop rolled, and he got 3.5 inches on top of that. So they have the similar challenges to what we have in Ontario, and at the moment they're only 4% planted. So we've got some challenges going forward. It certainly will mean there won't be any early beans from our region in Ontario and Michigan. We're probably looking at harvest for sure in October. So we want September and October to be frost-free. So we're not killing the crop yet, but we've still got a long way to go. So we've been known to plant the first week in July. I can't deny that, but it sure makes us uneasy for the duration of the crop year.
Thank you, Marion. I'm going to throw you a little change of pace here. How has the global tariff changes over the past year impacted the white bean industry? And that's pretty prevalent.
Yeah, yes. As we all remember the date, June 22nd, when the European Union declared a 25% tariff on a retaliatory tariff on the U.S. beans going into Europe, it certainly, I would say, sparked a lot of phone calls, both to the Canadian industry as well as to the U.S. industry. So I think there was some contracts in the U.S. that had to be renegotiated. Some were canceled. It caused a lot of grief for a lot of dealers in the U.S. And to say it was an advantage for Canada, to a certain extent, but Canada can't supply all the dry beans that the European Union needs. So as much as we appreciated all the phone calls, and it was difficult to turn away the business, we certainly had to stay in line with our current customer base and tried to support where we could the existing customers that we have been all year, or for the past years. We're always cognizant that this tariff could come off as quickly as it comes off, and we don't want to. We know that the U.S. felt the pain on the front end, and we certainly don't want to feel the pain on the back end. So we trade very cautiously. And as well, there's a 10% duty, well, I believe it's 10 or 25% on U.S. beans into China at this time. But to date, there hasn't been a lot of beans exported out of China, out of the U.S. into China. So that really hasn't impacted the market per se as yet. So.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to direct my next question to Atef. And on your lubias, what is the expected quality of the summer lubia crop now that it's coming off?
Actually, lubia in Egypt this season in summer already started harvesting since almost 1 month. We have different areas for plantation and harvesting. In Egypt, we have what we call new areas or desert land. Those new areas and desert land, they harvested since 1 month. And size of lubia per 100 beans is not big. I mean, maybe 2/3 of 100 gram will be 210 to 230. And the balance will vary between 140 to 170. So if you wish to buy large white beans from Egypt, most of wise exporters will ask you to take large and medium together. So they can segregate for you the larger size if you wish to package to sell commercially. When you see by eye to sell by count, they will give you 3 or 4 containers in each 10 containers of large size, which count up to 170, 180 maximum, and the balance will be 210 to 130, not even 210. But when they sell to you all together, commingled or mixed clean, like we do to Arabian neighboring countries like Iraq and Libya, Tunisia, we don't need to segregate larger sizes from medium and smaller sizes. Just nicely clean, very nice, very white this season, and they sell as is. Prices so far sold and people are now selling is anywhere between 11.50 to 12.15 as per port Mediterranean ports. So this is what's happening, and of course, as Judd said, crops this year is big. Both winter is gone. It was only 20,000 tons for winter. Now for summer crop, it's about 150,000 metric tons. And we are back to the 2017 crop. Also, I know Judd might ask me or anybody from audience, I would like to release an information because people were asking me, will prices come down in Egypt as and in competition with Argentina, beautiful quality and good quality, regardless of competition, I don't think Egyptian prices will come down. Two main reasons. Reason A, dollar last year and the year before was at 80 for each dollar exchange rate for pound. Today, a dollar is only 16.80. So traders, exporters, they know the value of the dollar and the value of white beans, and I think they are offering not below 1100 ex-warehouse. So up to 12 to 15 C&F so far, and I don't think it will drop. Thank you.
I'd like to hear the question to Fethi. And the first one I have is, and I kind of came up with this myself, is alluvias. You know, Turkey is the doorway to distribution of white beans into countries in that region. Do you see that continuing?
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, no, it's Turkey is the doorway into a lot of countries in that region using white beans. In other words, they're going to come into Turkey and you will distribute it into countries that a lot of other countries don't sell direct. And you see that distributing given the world circumstances?
It will continue. It will continue like that because we have a geographic advantage.
Yeah.
And if you go like that, you know, when you order a quantity to, let's say, Canada or Argentina, the final customer gets in 3 months, 2 months.
Yeah.
But in Turkey, if they order, 3 days we deliver to Iraq, or in 2 days we deliver to Syria. I think it will continue like that. We will continue to buy, we will continue to keep in bonded warehouse. Then I think Turkey will be a transit business, will continue like that. Yes.
Okay. And do you see the volatility of the Turkish lira having a big impact on that?
It is not affecting the transit business, of course. It is affecting the import side only. In fact, that volatility, if it is in long term, or let's say inflation rate, importers are arranging themselves to reflect the prices. But if that volatility in the kind of shock, then it's very hard to follow the international market prices. Then in 1 month time, let's say 50%, 20% devaluation, then it takes time, at least 4 or 5 months to get the international level again. So that volatility is creating for the importation side. I mean, to consumption in domestic side.
Okay. And I want to direct another one back to Atef, if I can. With the current world tightness of medium to large white beans, is there backed up demand for Egyptian alluvias now that they're coming off? Are you seeing a lot of demand coming in? Or is there issues with countries fearful about currencies and not having the money to buy them?
Luckily for Egyptian growers and Egyptian exporters, and for the variety which we produce as long shape, medium long size, there is always demand for Egyptian alluvium. Even if it will not come from outside, it's consumed locally. Because I have a role in the market of white beans in Egypt. I've been practicing myself, import, export, brokerage, and growing. Because I have a growing farm for fruits and with small trees, we usually can put some Faba bean and or white beans as per the season time. So I see all the stages of white beans. There is a local demand which is big. And what Egyptians do is when they export, they take the number 2 or number 3 or of grade or imported cheap origins to replace for the local market.
Okay.
So number one, we have a good local market demand, and with high seasons of export, it's a minimum 15 to 30% local consumption of same Egyptian dollar. Otherwise, we do import from Ethiopia, from China, wherever it will permit lower prices, sometimes in Madagascar, sometimes in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
We have seen other origins which look like same quality or close to from Egyptians they like and they use. So I think demand is always there. Arabian countries, neighboring Iraq, Algeria, Tunisia, Jordan, Libya. Of course, we are all there by trucks or even by sea. There is no stock of buying Egyptian models, summer and winter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's here about 14 minutes to go. I think at this point we need to come over and start taking some questions from the audience. Okay, that'll make it easier. I'm twisting my neck. All right, we'll take the first one off, and this will obviously, Director to you. Is the Egyptian crop of white kidney beans really this big? How accurate can you get to have the size of the summer crop?
The size of the crop, it will not be less than 150,000 metric ton, that's for sure. Mainly because of also, as I said, on new lands in Egypt, which is all irrigated, it does not depend on rains. So luckily we have a stable crop as per what is being planted. So it will not go less than 150, and I agree with Judd, 270. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't know if you have this information there, Todd, but they're asking the question, what's your forecast for Baltic production this year for Fabas?
Okay, so the Baltic or the Lithuanian farmers have to declare the hectares. These were released today. They came in at 53,000 hectares. In a good year, Lithuania should produce 3 to 4 tonnes per hectare. Last year they had dry weather, and I think they only produced something like 2.5 or 2.8 tonnes to the hectare. So let's be conservative and say today 50,000 hectares at what, 2.5? So what's that, 125,000 tonnes? Is the maths correct?
Okay, we have another question here for Atef. The percentage of Egyptian production, you estimate that the caliber will be 170 or better?
Small, not more than 20-25%. And they will not segregate to sell 170 per 100 grams. They will not. Because all neighboring countries, they don't look for large caliber as European, Spain, some Algeria. No, Egyptians will not care very much to segregate the larger size from medium to small size because it's a small ratio. It will not exceed, it can be much less, but it will not exceed 25% of the total production of the crop to make size 170 to 180. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a question here. We missed the Faba beans import slide. Can you have a quick look, please? That will probably be on the internet when this is done. They'll put out the whole presentation on there with the slide. Well, they brought it up. I think we want to go to here's the exporter. We don't have volumes, but we have the percentages of the world volumes of trade. If you look at Lithuania, it's 9.7, Latvia 4.0, and Estonia is a very small percentage. We didn't include it on this because it's such a small percentage now. But what's noticeable about them is that they're pushing to get more and more into the export market to generate revenue. Go back to questions, please. Here's one. Is the decrease in U.S. plantings and increase in Canadian plantings a result of EU retaliatory tariff of 25% on U.S. beans? Marion, want to grab that one?
Well, I think the answer is pretty simple on that one. For sure it is. Certainly the dry meat industry, the biggest volume for ourselves and for some in the U.S. is the EU. So I think between the two countries, we look to be up about 3% in planting, but the other thing we have to keep in mind is last year we had exceptional yields, so and they're already off to a poor start. So maybe we'll end up with the same volume as last year, maybe just displaced more in Canada and less in the U.S.
And in last year's crop, we're not going to see big to start with. They weren't bumper crop years or average crop years. We've got another question here. How Argentina will compete on price with Egyptians, which has good crop this year?
Well, I personally disagree with the quantity Egypt will have in the presentation. I think that if Egypt will keep the prices, as my colleague stated, Argentina can compete perfectly at those prices.
All right, we'll go to the next question. People are very interested in Egypt this year. I'm getting a lot of questions, so keep asking you. Egypt, the 140-160 size seems to be big. Never heard of that. Can you clarify, please?
We Egyptians do not have the quality naturally and to grow 140 to 160. As I said, the average size is 185 to 210 in most of fields. We have almost stable climate. We have irrigation. Seeds are as old as Egypt, 7,000 years, Faba bean and white beans. So they have no time to change the seeding to generate or bring or multiply for larger sizes.
Okay.
So Egyptians are happy with this production because it's economic what they get.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the script here. I'd like to go back to Nicolas. And there's a question that we had, and I'd like to get an answer to, is Argentina faced an election in October. Do you think that's going to have a change in the Argentinian government, and what effect is it going to have?
Well, it's a good question. Argentinian business decisions are very close to our government policies. As I previously said, Argentina has an export tax from August of last year of around 10%. The tax is calculated the 10% of the FOB prices of foreign products and services we export. So that is a very important loss of competition. If the actual government win the elections, which I hope so, the tax will probably be taken away by December 2020. If the actual government lose the elections, I really don't know what is going to happen. It is very difficult to make predictions in Argentina.
Thank you. And I'm going to throw a quick one back at Marion again, too. To kind of surmise real quickly, what do you think of the supply-demand scenario is going to be for the coming year in North America? What is the supply-demand going to be in the coming year for North America for Great Northerns and Navy beans?
Well, regarding supply, if I start in Canada, I would say that we'll be totally sold out. So any stocks that we do have will be sold going into the 19 crop year. In the U.S., I believe, well, most recently they had a government tender for domestic and export food aid, that requested Great Northern beans to be submitted, and I understand that there were very little, if no offers on those Great Northerns. So they've just recently come back and revised that tender to be include baby beans. So that's going to take, I think it's about a little over 7,000 metric ton that they're asking for. So we take that out of the supply in the U.S. and they'll be coming into a crop year with very good carryover as well. So certainly we always keep some carryover for our larger customers who rely on us depending on when harvest comes in, but every very little carryover, and we expect the demand to be similar to last year, so, and not an oversupply in production.
Oh, good, thank you. Now I will throw one back at Fethi. We have a question. Do you think Turkey can be white bean exporter again like they were chickpeas 20 years ago? Is government support to white bean producers like chickpea farmers in Turkey?
Definitely not in short term. Our global and market participants as exporters and importers, we are trying to increase the quantity or convince the government to support more for white bean plantation. But we don't have the vast large lands like Canada around us. So we have to choose from the best alternatives. But I cannot say impossible, but it's very hard to be exported from Turkey. At least at short term.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, another question has popped up, and sometimes I hate to get into the what's the market price thing, because you never know what it's really going to be in the long run. But offers from Argentina and Egypt, the US dollar is 1,100 CFR. With the increased area and lack of demand in comparison to last year, do you expect the price to remain stable? And we'll start with Egypt and then go to Argentina.
I would recommend myself prices will stay the same as long as there is demand, because I know there is demand every day.
Yeah.
We got people asking and buying and loading, so I don't think prices will drop, and they can maintain the crop up to the end of the year, because there is demand all year round for the Egyptian loading.
Okay.
And I still suggest recommend market prices will not drop in Egypt. Thank you.
Good. Now we'll get the reflection from Argentina.
Yes. Well, the increase in area is very little, maybe around 5 to 7%. And this year we have zero stocks in Argentina. So if we comparison to last year in terms of production and the export figures, we will be in a very similar place. So I think that the increase area is not the important thing to look for. The lack of demand, it is true that in the last weeks maybe it was a little weak, the demand, but we have to think so that in the months of February and March, Argentina was exporting alubias about $1,300. So I think that it is relative. I don't expect the prices go down, principally because it is impossible for Argentina to compete at prices below 11.50.
Good, thank you. Well, we're now to a minute 19, and I just put one more to Todd, if I could, before we cut out. Given the bulk of the Faba trade is to Egypt, which obviously carries inherent risk, are there other potential markets for Faba beans?
You're right, it's always dangerous to have all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So Egypt consumes probably 70% normally of Australian beans. So it's very important that we do try to develop other markets, and we are venturing further into Asia now, in countries such as Indonesia and Vietnam, who are using it in their animal feed mixes. But also in the last season, Australia has consumed a significant tonnage into our own domestic feed market. There's also some development in the aquaculture feed demand, which the UK uses a lot of their Faba beans for fish feed. So hopefully we can get that percentage down to something like 50% in the next 5 years.
A little more self-dependent upon the usage rather than having to look so much to the export market would be helpful. Well, we're down to 15, 14, 13 seconds, so this will conclude our presentation. It was very nice presenting to you folks. We have a very excellent panel right here.